As the Senate gets closer to possibly making CIA Director Mike Pompeo the new Secretary of State, we have new information about some of his religious views, which are not a purely personal affair. They could potentially have world-changing foreign policy consequences. Now, some of this is coming out of video, some of this is coming out of a TYT Investigates exclusive, which is of course exciting. But why don't we go first to video, him talking a little bit about his personal views on the world.
He would work every day to make sure that the Lord's word governed our actions each and every day. It was a remarkable moment. We are blessed to live in Kansas where there are so many people that understand that. We will continue to fight these battles. It is a never-ending struggle until that moment Pastor Fox spoke about, until the rapture. Be part of it. Be in the fight.
So he believes in the rapture.
Okay, so I guess that's not that surprising. A lot of evangelicals believe in the rapture.
Oh, should I define it just in case?
Yes.
I mean, some people might be not familiar with it. Evangelical rapture theology typically includes a belief that for Jesus to return, Jerusalem must first be Israel's capital, and the world's Jews must return there. Jews who do not then convert to Christianity will be destroyed in the end times. But the exciting part is that at some point, some percentage of the world's population will be sucked into the afterlife, like immediately, and so planes will fall out of the sky, and a lot of Christians love imagining looking down on their now damned former friends and family.
Yeah, I mean, so don't get me wrong. Before we get to Mike Pompeo and the very serious implications, I want to point out that this is the thoughts of lunatics, and so that means I'm offending about 25 to 30% of the country. That's a sad day for them. Sorry that they got triggered by that. What is far more worrisome is not me offending them. It's them thinking that, hey, wouldn't it be great if Jesus came back and then murdered 7 billion people? It would be an Armageddon, literal Armageddon, a Holocaust like we've never seen before. 7.5 billion people would be murdered. And these folks in the middle of the country or all around are like, yes, I can't wait for everyone to die, but I'm gonna get sucked up. It kind of sounds like Muhammad Atta. Hey, I'm gonna go get the 71 virgins in heaven, but meanwhile you could die in flames, and I'm super happy about that. So if you're looking forward to the rapture, there's something really, really wrong with you. And you have great disdain for people around you. Your views are 1,000 times more offensive than me calling out your views. So now that applies to everyone who believes in the rapture if they actually believe in it, and a lot of them actually have been taught this insanity and they've been brainwashed and they do believe it. And Pompeo's among them, and he's proudly declaring it publicly. Now, if you're a plumber in the middle of Kansas, Pompeo's from Kansas, and you believe this, it's a sad day for you. You believe in voodoo and magic, and it's a sick, particularly evil version of that. But okay, you're not harming anyone. It's just you sitting on your own. Pompeo is up for Secretary of State. So Israel being the capital, well, that is very relevant if you're Secretary of State. Jerusalem, being the capital of Israel. And by the way, the white evangelicals put Donald Trump into office. 81% voted for him, 85% voter turnout. And so he gave them what they wanted. Now, why do they want this? Because of the rapture, because they really believe Jesus is gonna come back and murder us all. So they're like, yes, we got what we wanted. And now, is that really gonna happen? Of course not. That's a ridiculous, insane thing to think. But what could happen is you keep pushing and pushing and say no because we need greater Israel. If you get in deeper into that theology of the rapture, we need a Eretz Israel, a greater Israel, so we can never end the occupation. The mosque in that area has to be destroyed. And so if you destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque, well then a lot of Muslims are gonna be enraged about that because it's one of the most holy places in their mind. Okay, by the way, that's also not true. It's just a building. Anyway, but then that could lead to an actual war where no, not 7.5 billion people are not gonna die. You're not gonna get sucked up by a giant vacuum cleaner. Jesus is not gonna come back, but those people will actually die. Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people will die. And lunatics like Mike Pompeo are looking forward to it and have significant power. Mike Pence is an evangelical, and now Mike Pompeo could be the Secretary of State. That's the guy who's supposed to do diplomacy and make sure we don't get into war.
Yeah.
Well, if you got this guy, he can't wait for the war.
Yeah, and look, Donald Trump at least pretends that he believes this stuff. I think it's unthinkable that he would worship someone other than himself, but he says that he believes this stuff. And we get put in a really interesting position with something like Mike Pompeo and what he said about the rapture. Because even people, like a lot of people in the middle and some people who themselves believe in the rapture will say that we're not being fair in some way to question if he's in a position to make decisions that could increase the odds of, in his mind, of Armageddon or not, and he wants it, he thinks it would be great and he'll be fine and it needs to happen, why would he not then make the choice that leads to Armageddon or makes it more likely? And they would say that we're being unreasonable, but there's nothing unreasonable about that. If he actually believes it, if he believes it is the best thing that will ever happen for the rest of time, and we've been waiting this whole time for it, and if it happens, you get to meet Jesus and you go to heaven and all that, then he's gonna do it. Unless you believe that he doesn't actually believe it, which seems like an odd position for a Christian to make, that he's just sort of being hypocritical or fake about it, I honestly don't know. But we have to take him at his word. He believes that it would be awesome if Israel was utterly destroyed, it started Armageddon, the whole world got totally wiped out, we are all living in Mad Max, that would be absolutely great. He says that. Why would we not believe that when he will soon be in a position to possibly make it happen?
So look, and by the way, almost all the Jews die. And yet, of course, the right-wing government of Israel supports monsters like this because they think, well, that's not really gonna happen, okay? But the right wing in Israel would also like war, so that's great, let's do war together. And they have their own different motives. Luckily, there are more rational people, of course, in Israel. Let's hope they win elections going forward. So now, this tape uncovered by Slate is from 2015. Now, Ken Klippenstein, reporting for TYT, then found sources at the CIA, as of course Pompeo was the CIA director under Trump and is until he gets if he gets confirmed as Secretary of State. And it turns out, no, within the CIA, he was also pushing his evangelical beliefs in government. So it's not theoretical.
Yeah.
He actually believes this and applies it to his job.
Yeah, so as you said, Ken Klippenstein talked to Michael Weinstein, founder of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. That's a watchdog group on issues of religious freedom in the military and intelligence community. And Michael had this to say, he is intolerant of anyone who isn't a fundamentalist Christian. The people that worked under him at the CIA that came to us were never confused. They never had time to be confused. They were shocked and then they were scared. Well, and you can read it. So like, he's in charge there. I mean, we're talking about elevating him to an even more influential and important position where he is in charge of our diplomatic efforts and obviously incredibly important in terms of war and defense and things like that as well. But already, this is the power and influence that he's exerting as the head of the CIA. He is already scaring these people whose job is to be calm and resolute in times of uncertainty. They're worried about what he might do before he gets even more power.
Well, to be fair, we had a Muslim president previous to him who appointed a bunch of Muslims who were implementing Sharia law in our government and were pushing it on citizens and workers underneath them, making sure that we go by a specific rule of law that's based in one religion. That's why we need the Freedom of Religion Acts and things like that to make sure Christianity is propped up, because we don't have enough of it in this country.
Yes.
Imagine, the whole point being, obviously my sarcasm, imagine if Obama actually did 1% of the things they said he was implementing. But this is a full-on assault of the exact same thing, just with the choice of that other religion, that one is okay.
Yeah, and look, he's also been associated with the Center for Security Policy. He spoke on stages with the same guys who've attended the group, et cetera. And that is the group that has accused President Obama of having a secret Muslim heritage. I like that that's an accusation. It's not true in this case, but and then what? Anyway, they've charged that Muslim members of Congress should not receive classified information because no Muslim could be trusted. They accused Hillary Clinton aide Huma Abedin of having ties to terrorist groups. Why? Because she's of Muslim descent, so she must be a terrorist. And they've lavished praise, as Klippenstein reports, on prominent white nationalist Jared Taylor. Lovely folks we have that are now in power. So as they vote on the confirmation of Pompeo, they should ask him some questions, which they probably never will, because then whenever you ask Christians about their actual beliefs, they immediately demand a safe space. They cry and cry and cry. I am offended, I am offended. I'm offended that you think we're all gonna be murdered in your fantasies, okay? That is a far more offensive proposition. So I think a perfectly fair question or set of questions to Pompeo is, you have stated publicly that you believe in the rapture and that that's what the government should lead. One, do you? Two, do you think the government should help that process along? Three, what actions do you plan on taking? Four, when did the Jews all die? Five, when do all Muslims all die? Six, when do all the Christians who didn't believe the same exact things you believe die? Because almost all of the Christians are also going to die, unless they're special evangelicals. If you didn't get the vacuum cleaner treatment, you're dying too. And how do you think they're gonna die? And how do you want them to die? Over an open fire? Maybe you wanna run a plane into them? How would you like that to happen, Mike Pompeo? Because I wanna know and I need to know if our next Secretary of State is a lunatic. If you become a member of the Young Turks, you'll be saying,
you know, I'm like a smart person.
So do it right now, tytnetwork.com/join. Get the whole Young Turks show every day.